And we are live.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, so we're going to start that again. That's what we're going to do.
We're doing it live. JB said he invited himself on the podcast, so that's what he's here for.
I don't think that's true.
I think he said volunteered, but
yes. Can't wait to hear from our good friends, great friends.
Beautiful. Thanks, JB. I nearly got your name wrong. I was going to miss that bit out.
We're lucky enough to talk to Gary Baker, who's back from... Sorry.
Eric's like, you bunch of amateurs.
Damn, he's good at that.
That's why they pay me the big bucks.
That was terrible.
It's all good. The coffee hasn't kicked in yet.
But, damn, I was muted and I had a good Jensen burn.
God's on my side today.
We're going to do that all over again. Welcome to the party, Eric.
All right. That was a good, let me try that one again.
Bitch.
Go, Jensen, do the last one.
Nice one.
We'll be a bitch.
Have it in my nature.
These guys don't even know what they're doing. Howdy, y'all. Welcome to episode 93 of the Triple P, the Plastic Posse podcast. My name is Scott Gentry, and I appreciate all of you coming by and listening in for another episode of Scale Modeling Goodness. I also want to give a special shout out to our patrons who help bring you the Plastic Posse, and also give a special thanks to our podcast partners, Tankcraft, Tamiya USA, and AK Interactive. We've got a full house this time out, just about. We're down one person, but we also have a special guest, Eric Kervina. Welcome to the Posse, Eric.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
In addition to our special guest, we have Jensen. Jensen, how you doing?
I'm doing swell. Kind of melting a little. It's very hot in the UK. A very toasty 23 degrees. We're just about surviving.
What's that in freedom units?
70 something.
73. We got JB in Colorado. How you doing, man?
Outstanding. Looking forward to the recording and have made some progress on the bench lately. So all good here.
Nice. California, Grant, how are things out there?
Doing great. Having a good time. Got a little work done this weekend. Had a little talk with, you'll hear in a little bit, and been good. All
right. And in Virginia, TJ, how you doing, man?
Tired, but alive. I was at work till almost 2:00 last night or this morning. So,
oh, geez, man. Well, let's stick with TJ. What's been going on in your bench in your neck of the woods?
Honestly, not a whole lot. I finished building the Bradley and took a bunch of pictures of it. It looks pretty cool. I liked it. I wrote an article for an on the bench article for MMI and sent that away to our buddy David Grummett. So this should be in next month's MMI. So it's pretty cool. And that's really been it. I haven't really been modeling a whole lot. We'll talk about probably why in a little bit, because it kind of leads into our first discussion point. But yeah, I have a lot of enthusiasm to model, and I think about it all day when I'm at work, and I get home and I'm like, I'd rather just play Xbox. So that's what I've been doing.
Man, I hear that. I've been on a streak as well. We'll talk about that a little bit. Grant, what's been on your bench, and what have you been up to?
Not too much. Gotten a few figures done. Getting ready for Best in the West in Vegas coming up in about a week. Actually, a week from today. Let's see. I was asked to write an article about KB2528, the KB2 that made famous with the recent pictures that were released of it from Leningrad. So I've been working on that. Of course, Night Shift did a version of it. Brian Krieger did one a while ago on it. Really good article. So I'm just working on that. And when that gets done, I'll hopefully get that shipped out and taken care of. But other than that, that's about it.
Nice. Let's go over to our guest, Eric. What have you been working on lately?
I've been working on a Maschinen Krieger Sturmkoffer. That's it's kind of a follow-up to the Modeling Insanity podcast turkey shoot build, because I built one for that and I was pretty happy with it right up until the very last step that I took in painting it and just ruined it completely. And so by the next day, I kind of hated it. So I'm building another one.
Man, it's a bummer when that happens. No recovering, huh? No overspraying or stripping on this one?
Actually, I wiped out a bunch of oil work that I had done on it, and I can fix that. I can put it back. There's just a couple other things about the kit that I don't really love. I managed to get some primer inside the cockpit and no way to clean that out. And, so there's just kind of looking at it. Is it worth doing that? I don't really like the way the toes work on that model. So I'm scratch building toes that are more articulated for it and just fixing some things about the kit that I didn't like as much. I mean, I still think it was a good kit. I had a lot of fun with it, but there's just some things I want to change.
Yeah, I understand that for sure. Jensen, what have you been up to over there?
Quite a bit, actually. So I have returned to the Jumbo, which it turns out I started, I think, 2 years ago. It feels like 2 years ago. Yeah, I painted it olive drab and got all the paint effects done on it, and I was really happy with it. And then for some reason, it went back in the box. No idea why, because I actually loved the paintwork. I think it's because at the time, I didn't want to do the Cobra King, the first in Bastogne model of that, because it's very famous. A lot of people have done it. Hence why I didn't put the 138 cast numbers on the turret, because I wasn't going to do that version. Then I found the box in my stash when I was tidying it up one day, and I just had to get it out. I was like, that paint works really nice, and this could be a really good model. Why have I not finished it? So I brought it back out. I just decided, what the hell, I'll just stick the first in Bastogne decals on it anyway. I want the model out of my stash, and I want another model in the cabinet. So stuck those decals on, give it a nice satin coat with VMS, and then just last night / yesterday afternoon, did a sepia pin wash on it with oil paint, clean that all up. It's looking really good, even if I say so myself. So that's where that's at. I'm going to do some detail painting now and then start weathering. I also I went to the Trafford Centre in the UK. My mum and sister dragged me out because my sister was buying maternity clothes. And there's a Lego store there. And I was like, well, if you're dragging me out to look at clothes, I'm dragging you to Lego. And as my payment for being such amazing company, got the Lego Natural History Museum. So I built that over a couple of nights. It's humongous. And now I want more Lego. The problem is, I'd say it's probably more expensive than model kits. So it's one expensive hobby for another. But yeah, that's what I've been up to. It's been really good. It's just a bit warm, so it's getting hard to paint. It's drying up.
I remember some discussions about that Jumbo and all of us telling you it's really looking great, and you just being like, no, I don't like it. I hate it. Putting it away.
Yeah, that's kind of one of my problems. It's like it takes me like nearly a year to realize actually that wasn't bad. I did it with the Jagdpanzer that TJ has. As soon as that had mud on it, I put it away. I was like, no, it doesn't look good. And everyone was like, you have to return to it. I was like, oh yeah, actually it does look good.
Need to have some English person come and take it off of your bench when you're done with it and say, this is mine now. And then a year later, they can just bring it back to you. JB, yeah, well, we can hope. JB, what have you been up to?
I've been working on the Bradley, so the B build for the Triple B Ballistic Posse Bradley buddy build. But yeah, no, so it's definitely doing the Orochi one. So I won that at the AMP show not too long ago. And with everyone cracking open the new Magic Factory one, I thought, well, I'll join in the fun, but I'll do an M3A3. And it's been good. It's not a bad kit. I did 3-tone NATO with the bricks on it being a variation of desert Cartan and some replacement ones that are kind of this greenish color, but it's been good. For anyone that's built the Bradley, they can do the hull in about a night, and then it takes 3 days to do the turret. It's actually a really interesting vehicle. The turret is so small when you put it on top of the turret, on top of the hull for that matter, but it's going well. And then I'm also in the process of finally finishing the Leopard. The base is the last thing to go. I put some mud on last night. Just letting that dry. I'll hopefully get it finished this weekend, and it'll be in Vegas. I will say some more microchips have popped up on the turret. No idea what the hell is happening, but it's going to be out of sight, out of mind here soon. So I'm just going to blame Scott.
Yeah, blame me and my crappy bottle of printer of primer. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm finished the Hetzer as much as it's going to be finished. I don't really like it, but it was time to move on from that one. And then got the tractor sorted, put some pigment on it, and finished up the weathering in the little place where the farmer drives it. I don't know what you call that, the driving area, and just working on the base now, just wrapping up a little base I made with foam and balsa. And need to get that painted and then get some grass tufts and some texture and call that good. And then I've been collecting pieces for my next build, which I'm getting excited about. And then in a week, I will be in Vegas with Grant and John and Doug and lots of our friends. It's going to be a good time. We're really looking forward to the Best of the West show down there in Vegas. So that's going to be a lot of fun. All right, well, let's go over to Jensen and talk about models in the Plastic Posse that caught our eye.
Thanks, Scott. So, yeah, we're just going to go through each of us and find which builds that were posted in the Plastic Posse group that we like this week and tell you a bit about them. So I will start. For me, I saw a 132nd JU88 by Revell. This was done by Joe McCaslin, sorry. It's big. It's a twin-engined German bomber with its greenhouse glass front and canopy. Looks really cool. Second World War German bombers just look really, really nice. The 132nd Revell kit's like the HE111 and the JU88. Again, a bit pricey and a bit hard to get. And it's nice to see people build them. And he's built this really nice. Really nice German splinter camo on it, really nicely weathered. And it's a really big model. So getting that in the spray booth and on the workbench is a task in itself. But yeah, it stood out to me. Really like it. So yeah, I thought I'd give that a mention. You can head over to the page and give that a look. Yeah. Scott, what caught your eye?
Well, I mean, this isn't going to be any big surprise, but man, Alex Clark, that guy is a machine. His mini art, 1/72 scale Stug 3, fantastic. The shot in there, the money shot on there is the picture of his build next to the pot of Tamiya paint, and it just really rocks your world. But he's done a whitewash on it. This is, from everything I've read, the mini art 72nd scale Stug is not an easy build. It has a lot of fit issues, and Alex has just chewed that up and spit it out, and it's amazing. I love the weathering. Besides the whitewash, which looks really, really good, the weathering is really in scale. I think in 72nd scale, it's really easy to get carried away with mud, with the size of the dirt and what you're putting on it. And I think he's just really, really nailed a scale finish on this thing. So it's beautiful. I don't know what else to say. So
yeah, I nearly chose that and I realized you've already picked it. I was thinking that's a gold medal master right there. Grant, what caught your eye this week?
Yeah, I'm the third guy that probably tried to choose that one before it was gone. The figures on that thing in 1/76 scale are amazing too. I chose Max Gregg. Says he's a newbie to the hobby, or I don't know if he's a newbie to the hobby or a newbie to the group, but he showed us Corsair cockpit and engine, which were fantastically done, I think. And what really drove me to this one a lot is that he says he's sitting with his son doing the work. So that's great, Max. Keep it up. Bring your kids into it early like that, and it's fun, and it's nice to see you doing that. But Max Gregg, great work on your Corsair cockpit and engine. If you're a newbie, you're doing really, really good, really, really well.
Yeah, that one caught my eye as well, and I realized you put that down. TJ, what about yourself?
I chose John Gray's Panther G for two reasons. One, it's awesome, and two, I knew JB was probably going to pick it, and I filled out mine first, so I had to snatch that one up. Yeah, I like John's work. He's got a really subtle style that I appreciate, and his three-tone is cool. And I like Panthers. It's like one of the only German tanks I actually kind of like, and I have one and I want to build it. So yeah, it's pretty cool. You did a good job.
Yeah, that one was really nice. Gotta love a Panther G. Speaking of JB, what about yourself? What caught your eye this week?
Well, since all the Panzers were taken, I went with the next best thing, which is Warhammer 40K. Got to give a shout out to Ron Lecker's Plague Marines. They're pretty cool. I just think they're super unique. He's done some OSL on it and some other different effects. So really neat. Keep it up, Ron. Appreciate your work. I know he's a heavy scratch builder and scratch designer, I should say, too, for some of the Warhammer tanks that he took to AMP. So yeah, that's my shout out. Great work.
Beautiful. Thanks, JB. So Eric, what caught your eye on the page?
Martin Drayton's Bandai hover tank conversion. I love those 1/35th scale Bandai UC hard graph kits. And I sometimes think maybe Martin snuck into my house or something and looked through the stash and was like, oh, what's all the stuff that Eric's going to build someday? And then he beat me to it. So, but yeah, I went through those pictures, I don't know, 4 or 5 times because I love that stuff, and he's done really cool stuff with it.
Yeah, I spotted that one as well when scrolling through. Martin always seems to just churn out an amazing amount of modeling considering how much he works and how much he travels. That one stood out as well. Thank you, Eric.
All right, let's go over to JB for a Scale Prospector kind of update.
Thanks, Scott. Issue 2 of the Scale Prospector just dropped, and we're super excited to share it with the community. It features articles, show reports, and reference material. The wait is worth it because we have over 50 pages jam-packed of content, as I just mentioned. We have TJ's Lunagans. I finished out Hollow Victory. Grant did a easy link and link track segment, and there's a bunch more of stuff. I'm super excited for issue 3. The Leopard that I've been working on will be in it. TJ's got a project, likely the Whippet. We've also got a guest, maybe even 2, Steve Baker's ME109, Ilya Yut's tractor as well, and then Scott's tractor, and then plenty of show reports from Vegas and other places we've been. So please stay tuned for that. We're going to try to make it, I'm going to say at least quarterly. Bi-monthly is my goal, but as we noticed, this one was delayed. But we thank you for your patience. We hope you love it. If you have feedback, let us know. If you'd like to contribute, let us know. We can work out a deal. So thanks so much, Scott, and we look forward to the next issue.
The Plastic Posse podcast is sponsored by Tankcraft, makers of the highest quality cutting mats for your modeling bench. Tankcraft cutting mats are heavy-duty, self-healing, come in 2 awesome sizes, and have World War II tank and aircraft blueprint-style drawings on them. Spread out your next build on an olive green M4 Sherman or Dunkelgelb King Tiger mat, and they've got aircraft too. So check out all the designs and also their range of unique modeling tools over at tankcraft.com. That's TANKRAFT.com. Don't forget, Plastic Posse listeners can use the code POSSE15 to get 15% off your first order.
All right, let's kick it over to Grant to talk about an interview we did.
So earlier this week, me and Scott sat down with Gary Baker. Gary Baker's a local figure painter out here from the San Diego area in California who's really, really good. We talked about MFC and his group of people that he works with in San Diego. He has a showcase area where he can use to demo figure painting and stuff like that. They have a visitor coming up in August. Christoph, I'm not going to try and pronounce his last name, but you can see that on the internet. But here you go. Hello, everybody, and I want to introduce Gary Baker, a good friend of the show. We thought we'd talk to him a little bit over the next little bit of time about his recent trip to MFCA. And he's got a local painter or a local paint group here in Southern California that has a very prestigious visitor coming up. So we wanted to also talk to him about that. So, Gary, good afternoon. How you doing?
Very well, gentlemen. Good to see you and speak to you once again. It's been a while. Too long, I would say. But, yeah, as I said, off air, me and my big mouth suggesting that someone should do a show report for these figure shows. I got myself hoodwinked into that by your good self, and so here I am.
Yeah, so. It's see what happens when you make a remark around me. It's usually I'm like standing there and going, I think I need to talk to Scott real quick. I'll be right back. So, yeah. All right. So I want to tell everybody to know that MFCA was last weekend here. It's a very large figure show in Philadelphia, including our good friend here. You give us a little heads up on it. What it's about, what you saw, some of the people you saw there also.
Yeah, I'll try and add some colour to the event, shall I, as opposed to putting people to sleep on the end of the podcast. I think, sort of like to start off, I'd like to say this is very much my personal view about it, and take out of it from what you will.
Definitely.
But it was really, what I saw there and what I've seen develop, not only at MFCA, but also MMSI in Chicago in October. You've done a little review on the show yourself. So I just thought, this could be potentially, a common trait between the two shows, and also doing the show reports on them as well, because maybe, there is actually a sort of a growing trend within these shows now. And so I'd start off with, I got there early. I went and done the 2-day figure painting class with Jim Rice.
Oh, wow.
So that's great. Getting in there early for 2 days. I just made a nuisance of myself at the back of the class and chewed Jim's ear off for 3 days, talking all things painting. But that was great. I deliberately didn't do anything I was told. I just done my own thing. But Jim let me do that. So that's good because you're making connections with other painters, etc. And, Jim just gives a great class. He's a natural educator. I hope he doesn't mind me saying that, but he's in his other fields of his professional life. You can just tell he's gone through that and he's extremely passionate about that. So what a nice way to start off a show. And he's doing this at a lot of figure shows now. He's done it at, I believe, Atlanta, and he's potentially trying to get him up to Long Island. So that was the kickoff for me. And then pretty much like the MMSI show, there's a lot of familiar faces turn up, Jim and Barry from Small Subjects. They come along and support it, obviously. A great guy, Dennis Levy. He's a guy sort of like oversees the whole of the MFCA show. Yeah, it's like I've only been to this one. This is my second time. I've done the Chicago twice, and you already have a feeling of like you're meeting old friends, and you guys experience that yourself in Chicago. That is a really great takeaway from it. And we always say that about shows, don't we? It's not the competing, it's the actual camaraderie it generates. And you could probably get that from a lot of shows you go to. But I just feel that this deserved some coverage purely because of what I'm seeing on the tables and the interaction of people. We also had a fantastic demo from Calvin Tan, no less. And he brought a large amount of figures himself and he put them in the competition, which was great.
Oh, wow.
To see those firsthand and to talk to them. That's one of the great takeaways is that you talk to everybody who's there without any problem whatsoever. If you want to have them do a critique, they will, or just general, something you catch them at the bar or something to eat. It really isn't a problem, and it's great in that respect. And I could go through a list of names, and I'm not doing this because you want to rub it into people, but you've got, mostly these are what they're considered masters now in their field of figure modelling, but also, there's some great armour modellers in there as well. And Doug Cohen, John Rosenkrantz, Greg DeFranco, Andy Golden, Greg Seelar, Bill Horan, Mike Blank, or Mikhail Blank as his real name is, but if he'll tell me off, I won't put his real name in there. James Rice. And then, this is what I thought was really important, Eric Swinson came back for second year. He's easily, top 5 fantasy painters in the world right now. He's won everything he goes in for. He's won Monte Sansovino. And Will Hahn came along as well. He's a fantastic fantasy painter. And I just feel that when you've got the likes of those now joining what was traditionally, and I do that in brackets, historical figure painting from the past, figure painting shows, the fantasy section was huge. It really was. It threatened to overtake everything, I feel, this year. But then we saw everything else on the table. There was a huge ordnance display of like planes, tanks, dioramas. Shout out to a young modeller there as well. He'd done a fantastic little diorama of a truck with paintings being taken off it of the Monuments Men. I can't remember the modeller's name, but it was great to see that as a young guy. And you've got, as I say, some really great armour modelling going on, some great planes going in there, plenty of sci-fi, a bit of Gundam. So the show as itself has really started to encompass everything. Amazing box dioramas as well. Jim and Barry would kill me if I don't mention that. And Dennis, there's some great box dioramas in there, and they are an artistic genre in their own right. I'm dying to do one myself actually. But culminating on all of that, you've got the traditional historical painters on there doing painting and conversions. Plus, also, like the fantasy people now really embracing it. Loads of young modelers running around the tables on the Saturday, which was really great to see. A few young girls in there as well that obviously, enjoy fantasy painting. You've got this amalgamation now, I feel, or this crossover of where the fantasy guys used to go to a lot of the gaming conventions. Someone like Eric coming along on this and giving it his stamp of approval is huge. And I feel personally, as I said, this is all my personal opinion, there could be great potential now that somewhere in America could, if we pull our socks up, do an equivalent of SMC. That's why I feel I think it's crying out for it now within the hobby. As I say, like you've mentioned, a painting workshop I'm doing, there's a great amount of talent now comes from overseas, but it's also within the US. Yeah. Doing these classes, etc. They could be add-ons, but who knows? MFCA might now sort of go into that realm because of the location of it. You get a huge amount of, not a huge amount, but you get a really great supply Europeans coming to the show as well. A couple of the Greek boys, there was the French were there. As I said before, Mikhail. So they feel it's very, very accessible. So that gives you a really international feel. I think what you're missing is that in the vendor area, Jim Rice's table, Sabat and Last Cavalry, they're probably the two of the major in the vending area. The rest are a lot of like individual traders. But model sellers in there as well. But we lack over here, I suppose, the big companies, that the European shows will get, and that gives it that prestige. But who knows? Further down the line, it would be maybe nice that they see the value in it, and you are not just going to places like Adepticon or whatever if you want fantasy figures and stuff like that. So lots of permutations I can see coming out of that. Lots of different avenues. That the potential's there, and that's something I've always done in my professional life, is sort of see these chance opportunities early and sort of explore them a little bit. So who knows? There was a really great section before the prize giving on the Saturday, because it's a 2-day show, the Friday and Saturday. They had a question and answers Q&A session with masters. So the people that have been voted masters, and just a little mention there, Jim Rice got voted to become a master this year. That was really interesting. It was really good. And Eric brought up a great question. I thought it was really good. He was asking, he said, in the fantasy world, they're seen very much as painters or sculptors, really, not one or the other. And, where does that crossover need to change maybe? Or I didn't really catch all of it, but why is it that it's more relevant in the historical boys will do way more conversions, build dioramas, and could we see that crossing over in fantasy? And I think that's just a matter of time. I've done a little scratch build of a fantasy figure myself. I mean, I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but I just feel that's where, from my historical modelling background as a kid, that's what I want to do. I want to pursue that. So maybe it's just the way it will go. But that's a brief overview. And also I did say, as I said to you, nearly 800 pieces on display.
Wow.
So that's not a small show by any stretch.
No, especially for a quote unquote figure show. The ordnance section was big, but still, I mean, it's because you're specifically a figure show.
Absolutely. That's its bread, you say either it's bread and butter or it's DNA. Mm-hmm. But because they embrace all of it, they put in new categories as well. You had new classes in there to embrace all of that. So, they're really making the same moves. And you'll see the same at MMSI as well in Chicago, doing, embracing all of the hobby. And because everyone recognizes you've got to do this now, because, the young kids are looking at other things. They're not being taught history anymore in the same way we were in school. So their avenues are being opened up somewhere else, be it a Gundam, Mecha or whatever. And then they might come along to a show and think, I might have a dabble at, this ancient or something like that. So, yeah, lots of different permutations coming out of it. And of course, you had the modern thing of podcasts. You had, the podcast people there as well. So Jim and Barry, obviously, with Small Subjects, Insanity podcast guys, a couple of those were there, and also the Built Sideways as well. They put in a show. And so when you're getting that sort of coverage, at least what were traditional figure shows, I think there's a change coming, as they say.
Congratulations to Jim, if you're listening, on being awarded Grandmaster. That's fantastic and very well done. Well deserved. I love your concept idea you had there about the younger generation starting to see this kind of show and maybe bringing stuff to the show. And these figure shows like this are very big. And, Eric is big in that too. He has a lot to do with that because he's huge in the figure world, the sci-fi fantasy world. So seeing him, basically put his arms around this show for 2 years now is great. It's just a matter of time. I think you're, 100% right there.
You hope so. I hope it gains some momentum. You said, Eric's great. He's throwing out all these free videos on YouTube after he does them on Twitch. I mean, you're getting, straight from the horse's mouth, warts and all, painting right in front of you. And I must say, everything always looks so much better in person. It's an often used cliche, but cameras and everything else, Jim's work, anyone else, Will's, it's just so much nicer to see it in person. It really does. The vibrancy of a figure, the subtleties of light and shade, etc. And, any armor guys that are out there that, are serious about, want to improve their figure painting, I come along to a show like that, you will get some great insights, but people will give you the time about, how they go about something and how they create it as well. Especially someone like Calvin Tan, he'd done a demo on the Saturday, which was great just to sit there and, just watch him paint. It's not going to happen a lot, is it? Because he's based in Singapore. So it was just, the quality of what these shows are doing now are embracing everything in the hobby and pushing us forward. It does remind me of growing up, going to old shows of Euro Militaire and seeing the guys painting around tables and sitting there as a young kid and just pestering them for 3 hours straight, asking questions and stuff like that. But that's the hook. That's what gets you back in later on in life.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I don't know if they did it in Philadelphia, but it did. I know in Chicago we had badges and we had our names on our badges. And
same thing.
Same thing. So your names were on the badges and your names were on the sheets that your figures were at. So people found you, talked to you, and I love that idea where there is that. It's kind of a way to break the ice, I guess would be a good way to say it. So you have that opportunity to go say, "Hey, John Rosengrant," or
putting a face to the name.
Gary Baker or whoever. Yeah. So, stuff like that.
Who he is. Stay away from him.
But stuff like that. And it's one of the fantastic things, and that kind of interaction and it makes the hobby, at least those shows make the hobby a lot better for me because it's more interactive and I have the opportunity to learn more, I think. So I'm really looking forward to Chicago. And, there's a show coming up in Utah in June that I'm really looking forward to. I don't know.
Absolutely. We're all looking forward to that.
Some weird dude from Utah is putting it on, but we're all looking forward to that. And he's pretty much sticking. They are pretty much sticking to that rule base too, and that's great.
I've apologized to them already. I can't make it. I'm sorry. I'm traveling for work in Europe, so.
Oh darn! If you got to travel in Europe.
No, it's not all great. Some parts are good, but and the beauty of that is you've got some nice distance between the actual shows themselves as well. Like these two are the standalones. You've got other shows that we know at Atlanta, Tulsa, etc. Figure-based shows. But I just think the spacing of like May and October between MFCA and MMSI, it's just nice. It allows you either to create some new stuff or, if you've missed one, you make the effort and get along to the other one. As I said, I thoroughly recommend anyone who's of any modelling genre. I mean, as we know, Chicago, Steve Husted was there with his amazing aircraft. So, and also the flat painters as well. There were some amazing flats with the French guys that brought over and Penny and Rick Taylor. So every genre of the hobby, barring maybe shipbuilding, but there's some bit of naval stuff in there, was at the show. So it really did have something for everyone. It was like that a well-known box of chocolates we have in the UK. It's something for all people.
What did you bring to MFCA, Gary?
What, as far as figures and things like that?
Yeah,
I brought in the usual disgusting amount and sweated my way through like 4 flights, 2 each way, getting them there and getting them back. I had minimal breakage going and same coming home. Lucky enough. I mean, I think that was the last time I actually take as much. I think I'm just sort of, I'm new back to painting. So, it's been that sort of embrace the hobby for the last couple of years, but I definitely have I'm going down a different avenue with it. So I think I'll have less at the next few shows, but watch this space, I suppose. But I did take enough. I had plenty more I had more in the fantasy than I did historical, and I had a bit in the open fantasy section, and I took along a little Whippet tank as well and sneakily put that in the ordnance as well. So yeah, enough. But I'm not going to bang my drum. You're not going to get me talking about my stuff. Sorry, but I go back to my Englishness. That doesn't happen. That would just disappear under my rock.
How was the Gen 3 demonstration by Calvin? I really that was like, oh man, I'd love to go to that.
It was great because it reinforced, and not only that, what he'd spoken about on a previous podcast somewhere else. He's using the paints with thinners and a matte varnish as his diluting agent. He's not using any water. And to see that in person, I've painted a couple of figures using it. Wow, I thought I should use it. It's great. It's quick. Mike Hillary has just posted something on Bust on Facebook where he's used the same techniques and he's got a great result out of it because it is very quick. I said to Calvin, I felt like I was cheating when I first did it, and he laughed. He said it is. So yes, it was very, very informative. It was quick, and he'd done the sort of base layers of a face and then a bit of a uniform. And to have that success so quickly, armor modelers that are always frightened of doing figures would benefit huge amount by seeing that, definitely. So, get your asses along to a figure show. Do yourself a favor.
Well, and just to reinforce what you said earlier, it's one thing to see them, on Facebook, and it's another thing to see him in person. Different impact, and altogether, I think, for sure. What about what were some of the pieces, if you remember any? Like obviously there were some best of show pieces, but any particular pieces that really inspired you?
Yeah, obviously I love Derek stuff, but seeing Will stuff in the flesh, Will Hahn's stuff in the flesh. So that was I just found them just actually beautiful. Was a word I would use with them. Just slightly different paint style, but I really took to those. John Rosencrantz done a fantastic bust of Vlad the Impaler Dracula, just a head and shoulders, but that was gorgeous. The Greek boys brought over a couple of figures, really nice. Bill Horan always knocks it out of the park with his dioramas, and the rest of the boys, say like Greg and Andy and Doug, their work's prolific, and it's almost terrible to say it, but because you're so used to seeing that standard, these boys, they turn up at the shows, they're going to get a gold medal because their standard is so high. And you looked at the people who, were walking away with gold medals. They'd probably win a gold medal at any show, be it SMC or, whatever. And obviously World Expo coming along next year. So, yeah, it was interesting. There was a French painter whose painting of embroidery and fabrics was just out of this world. It was just it was mind blowing to see that on a 75mm figure. And, John's large Stug was in there. I don't know how he transports those damn things around, and he also had some other large-scale figure sort of vignettes. Yeah, just a lot. You could say it's slightly overwhelmed, but I took as many pictures as I can, and I would sort of leaf back through them as I go over the next sort of few weeks, looking for some inspiration, really. But that's what I can remember briefly, and anyone whose name I don't drop in there, my apologies, because there was so much.
Yeah, 800 models. That's a lot to remember for sure. But yeah, the pieces on the table that I saw and the photo galleries, et cetera, looked really, really inspirational. And but it was great kind of sharing that moment with Jim Rice, seeing him be awarded the master.
Yeah, I think, he seemed quite sort of taken aback with it as well. And rightly should. You're being recognised by your peers, and anytime you do that within your industry or whatever, or your hobby, it's always a great thing. But he is extremely driven and passionate about that, and where he's going with it. And he wants to push painting as far as he can. I mean, in the class, he's got a German machine gunner being painted with lime green and turquoise. He's just blowing people's minds out of the water with that. But it worked, and for what he wanted to get. So, long may that continue.
Absolutely. Well, I haven't been to MFCA yet. I'm hoping to maybe go next year, but the environment at MMSI was so just kind of a breath of fresh air compared to other shows I've been to. And it sounds like, many of the people that are at MMSI or at MFCA, and you get kind of a similar environment of support and inspiration, with all the artists that are attending the shows.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the guys themselves sort of openly admit it's like a friendly rivalry between each show. But the close connections, they're almost, me personally, I just feel like they almost morph into one because of the attendance of people there. There's a couple of modelers that don't go to each one because either the fear of flying, travel, or whatever it might be. And, it's that's a shame. But, generally on the whole, you see some, it's just great, seeing some familiar faces, as it were. And then you'll see some new ones further on.
Oh, that's great. I mean, what's neat about it also, I think, is that like you said before, is that you're starting to see a lot more of the Europeans come back since COVID has been over for a little while. You're starting to see a little bit more of them show back up at these shows too, which is always fantastic. Seeing the work that is being done over there and it brings it over here is it's inspiring to say the least. So, we've talked about Philadelphia, but let's talk about you a little bit. You're a fledgling trying to get a little painting group going on over here, and we do appreciate that here in the San Diego area. But you have a big announcement that you put on Facebook today. Go ahead and tell everybody about it.
Yeah, so Christoph is a painter from Poland. Admired his work for a long time. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his surname. You've got to go on there and just work it out yourself. I'll just butcher that. He's one of a few painters that I've reached out to. I'm not going to give the names of the others that I'm in the process of talking to, purely because, until they commit to it, you don't want to sort of get people's hopes up. I've got a couple of other great painters. Hopefully they're going to make it, because I'll talk to Penny. So Penny's now, if anyone doesn't know, Verco's Vault in Vegas, it's going to become, if it hasn't become already, a mecca for figures, and it will cover everything eventually. It'll be historical It's got a massive fantasy collection. And she was saying, I don't want to tread on your toes. I'm saying, absolutely not. I've got no qualms whatsoever. If I don't do as many paint classes here as you do at Verco's Vault, and it's only a short flight from me, I really don't mind. I just wanted to give that opportunity that, we'll carry on and invite people over to the space that where part of my work is. It's a ready built academy, not for modelling, but for something else. But because we've got all the seating and, natural daylight, plug sockets on the floors to plug in lamps, it just worked out as a great venue. I did it like a couple of, maybe 18 months ago now with the first painter. We've had a couple since, and they've proved to be a great success. So, I thought we'd just keep trying it. A couple of those a year. I've got no problems with that, of, just promoting them. And anyone who fancies having a go at figure painting, doing a bust, I thoroughly recommend it. It accelerates your painting curve massively. This is like, I've done 4 of these now with different artists, and they've all given me something that has accelerated that curve, definitely.
Is it a 1 day or a 2 day or?
It's a 2 day. Yeah, it's a Saturday and Sunday. Yeah, so you get a lot. I mean, you say, argument's sake, you go to Jim's class, he's got you in there painting at 8 a.m. Mm-hmm. There's no scheduled lunch. You can go to a lunch if you wish, but you can carry on painting. And we finished at, I think, 5, 6 o'clock. I mean, it was 2 full days of painting.
That's great. So
I nearly finished a figure. He said, you can put it in the competition. I was like, I don't want to finish it now, but you can get that amount done. So, yeah, it's just great. I think if you have any sort of passion for that side of the hobby, to be around like-minded people, because it is a very insular hobby, isn't it? We all say that when why do you go to shows? Because you like hanging out with the other modelers. And it's the same with going to a paint class. I suppose, from my industry, you can see it. People all go in, they don't know, what level they're at. They're frightened of showing their work to the person next to them. Oh, they look good. They've never seen their work, but they just look good. And you sort of like hide that, we see people hiding their stuff, and then, half a day in, no one gives a whatever. I'm not going to swear, but no one gives one of those. And everyone's sort of mucking in together and, throwing the paint around, and realise we're all crap and we're all got to learn something. So, thoroughly recommend it. And I say, not just my workshop, look at Verco's Vault as well. People like Eric are going to be there. I keep saying to Eric, I want to get him out to San Diego as well. I was pestering Will, but he can't. He's just too committed with his work and family life, etc. So, please have a look on Facebook. I've got it on my Instagram account. There's Miniature Painters SD. It's on there as well. And if you are interested, either you can message me directly or go through the channels on the flyer, and you can email Christoph directly as well.
Just seeing Christoph's work before, just to spend 2 days with, like you said, painting for 2 days with them, and it would be fantastic. That's something that you could, always fall back on is a skill builder any day, and it's funny that you say that. And I see like the West Coast becoming more and more of this with Verco's Vault and your work out here. And I think we're trying to bring the figure stuff back here to the West Coast, which is nice. We had scams for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, you had the scams, the people who, like say, Bill Horan, Mike Good, they were huge people out here who pushed the hobby forward then, and it sadly came to an end. But who knows? This seems like a revival, and it's probably appropriate that the fantasy side of it is maybe leading the way, because you are going to, just hit everyone, display painters, gaming painters, from all different genres.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. I mean, I remember sitting in Chicago and looking at the gaming figures and the people that were running, and there was a lot of young painters there, fantastic young painters. And it's great to see that. It's great.
Well, you've even got a Mr. Banani doing a Space Marine.
Yeah, I mean,
so
who would have thought that?
Yeah, he's drunk the Kool-Aid. He knows. He's now turned to the dark side. He knows what it's all about. I want to see him paint a face now, though. He's just copped out doing a helmet. I'm like, come on, put the eyes on. Let's see some skin tone.
I think there's a real, convergence, Gary. You talk about a little bit of a renaissance, but I also think this is how people are coming into the hobby. We talk about that on the Posse a lot, but, Warhammer painters, look at how big Adepticon and the Las Vegas Expo and events like that are. And then, when you go to MMSI and you see the number of entries in fantasy, it's great. And it's good to see people coming together. I think a lot of so-called armored, traditional, whatever you want to call them, aircraft guys are starting to do both. Grant and John, you mentioned John and TJ, they all have kind of 1 foot in each of those puddles. so to speak. And I just think there's getting to be more and more of a hunger or a demand for, these kind of shows and figure kind of shows and different formats from the traditional amps and IPMS shows.
Well, I think, you boys are doing that, the right thing. You are going to have one category, aren't you? One, when you do your show. And I was talking to Barry about it at the show. I said, how refreshing that is. I could turn up, I could put a tank in, I could put a biplane with a 3-headed monster and someone from the American Revolution, put them all in one slot.
Yeah.
It's marvelous. Absolutely great idea.
I think, where we're introducing sort of this idea to a new crowd, geographically speaking, we just feel like that's probably the best way to approach it for an inaugural show. But we're really excited. It's really, treating the modelers like artists, like you see at MFCA and MMSI, and like customers as well. And that's kind of what we're going to do. So we're really excited for the show, and I think it's great that there's going to be an open format show out here in the West, and hopefully that's not the only one. And you mentioned Penny and everything that's going on with Gary and David down there at Verco's Vault. It's amazing, and I just think, like I said, it's like a convergence that's happening, I think, right now in modeling.
Well, I think you could see it with you boys. I mean, I've listened to your podcasts from when they first started going, went back to, when I found you, and went back and listened to the original ones. And I don't know I hope you don't mind me saying, but it was very armor, stroke, aeroplane, Mac orientated, and the people you interviewed and all the rest of it. And over a period of time, you can see that has changed massively. And you've gone down so many more different avenues and interviews since that time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've gotten to talk to a lot of people like yourself and Duncan Rhodes and Luther Davies and Lila Mev and some really amazing, figure painters and fantasy figure painters. So yeah, it's just incredible.
Yeah, I know. Another thing, I'm not doing this as a political statement, but promoting these shows, be it MFCA, MMSI, to the people that haven't heard about them, that they're out there and should find out about them. You don't have to necessarily think everything's built around maybe your Nats once a year. There are different little stuff out there that you can go now and see. Extremely high caliber work. It doesn't show up at that. Maybe that one. See a different side of the hobby. Not going to do you any harm.
Yeah, absolutely. And it all crosses over. I mean, your work, some of your pieces you scratch build or you kit bash, and other pieces, are just, bust or whatever. And then as an armor guy, sci-fi kit guy, you go see these figures and you get inspired, and it makes you want to paint, even if you're terrible. But that's the way you get better is you go get inspired and get out the paintbrushes and have a go.
Yeah, it's I think Eric's touched on this in one of his videos. I'll go back to that. It's just a discipline. He said, he didn't turn up being good at non-metallic metal overnight. He spent a year doing it. And it's the same. My face painting improved because all I did was just paint faces for a couple of months, of any different scale. And you just carry on doing it. And you learn after, and I feel like I'm more than happy at the moment to sort of take a step backwards in my painting because I know I need to do that to go forwards, if that makes sense. I'm not trying to turn out everything and worry about it being an amazing caliber now, because I'm trying stuff that I know is going to screw up. And it may not look as strong as the last piece, but I'm like, what the hell? It's like, otherwise I'm only going to just keep on producing the same. And isn't that the definition of madness? Doing the same stuff and just expecting different results.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, I've got to throw the paint around a little bit differently. I'll try something else to maybe break through the next ceiling. Who knows? I've definitely done that last year.
You see that I think you see that a lot more in this genre of painting, of shows where you start to see more splashes of color, like you talked about a German soldier and turquoise, and but you see the color and you see what the color can do, and you start playing with color, like we learned from you and we've learned from Duncan and all these other people that you see what color can do for a figure or what it could do, and you do have to take that, like you said, take the steps back first and then go forward again. It's kind of it's a learning process. And you bring up, that's a very good point, that a lot of people want to stay at a certain point, so they just kind of flatten out. But it's sometimes like you said, you have to step back to improve, to go forward again. Face painting is a perfect example. Non-metallic metal, another perfect example. Things like that. Scratch building is another, something you have to fall take steps back, and then you got to learn to, go forward again. So all things that are very important, very, very important.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen,
yeah,
I was going to say, are you happy with our show overview? I hope so.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. But it's like really great to hear, but it just makes me like, oh man, MMSI is a long ways away. I can't wait to meet up with you there and do that event.
All I wanted to do is just say, just go, what was it, Jim Carrey? Losers. Not turning up. Your own fault. Should have been there. Yeah. Everyone else, don't worry about that. You two can take the abuse. So you should have been there.
Absolutely. Thanks for hopping on with us and kind of giving us the flavor of the show. One more time, how can people find, if they're in the Southern California area interested in working with your group, how can they find you?
Very easy. We've got an Instagram page, Miniature Painters SD. I'll say that again, Miniature Painters SD. And I put on there whenever the next meeting is, you can contact me directly, direct message on there, and you will just give you the time, etc. It's not the same date every month, purely because of my work commitments. It sometimes changes. So there's no set time. Once we're in there, we might paint for 3 hours, we might paint for 4 hours. And as I said, it's not like a show and tell or anything like that. We take along our brushes, paints and a light, and we sit there and we just paint for like 3, 4, even 5 hours before. And you can paint anything. We don't care what it is. It's not a case of, you can only bring, the latest big 110 mil orc or anything like that. It's any figure you like. I've got a couple of guys from the IPMS club come along. They've bitten into it. They've got the bug now, and they one's doing a skeleton and things like that. So yeah, at the moment, that's the only place you can find it. But you can message me directly, Facebook Messenger as well. Contact me on the through your pages and stuff like that. If you see my work pop up, I'll always promote it, and I'll be sending out that promotion for that artist over the next couple of months anyway. So even if you don't want to make that and you're visiting, and you're in their area for just that weekend, just pop on down. I'm still waiting. I'm going to throw a rope round Grant's neck and drag him along. He's not too far away.
That's right.
He's not too far away.
No,
that's right. No. Well, thanks again, Gary. It's great to talk to you, and we'll talk again soon.
Likewise, gentlemen. Look after yourselves. Till the next time.
That was a good little show recap from Gary. Appreciate him coming on to talk about MFCA and his painting group. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Let's move into our first discussion. As I've been kind of thinking about this week, I've been on a little bit of a tough run on my bench where I've gone to the bench and I've started working, and I've kind of been, doing a lot of, I think some of the other podcasts call it negative modeling, but just messing things up. And so it's kind of been thinking about that and trying to analyze what was going on. And one of the things I've been thinking about is, there are particular areas or things that trip me up consistently. So my question to the group is, and I think I want to start maybe Jensen with you, but what's the one area or item that when you're building and painting a model, it derails you consistently? This is something that is going to cause you just about every time to move the project to the side, reach for another project, put it back in the box, decals, masking, weathering, whatever. What is it for you, if anything, that derails you?
Yeah, this is a really good discussion because I've actually, for once, I know exactly where the issue is. Building, no issue. Building, love doing that. Painting, love doing that. Weathering, really enjoy that. I think my issue, I know for a fact, my issue comes when I don't know what I'm doing. And that kind of sounds silly. So the Jagdpanzer I'm doing now, the Hetzer, that's been put aside. The Jumbo was put aside. A lot of my other kits in the past have been put aside, where it's all built, ready for paint, and I still haven't decided what camouflage or marking option I'm doing. Because usually when I start a kit, I've already got one in mind because I've seen a reference or the kit comes with a marking scheme or camo that I really like. And I'm like, yep, before I even start it, I know I'm doing that exact model. If I've started the kit, progressed and finished the build, and I still don't know where I'm at, it all halts. And that's the problem with this Hetzer I'm doing. It's currently painted yellow, and that's all it's at. Because, and we've discussed this quite a while, Scott, you've sent me a lot of references. it's not made progress because I just don't know where to go with it. And I should have decided that before I started the kit. And it was the same with Jumbo. I knew I didn't want to do first in best known. There's no shortage of markings I could have done, but because I hadn't decided that prior, it halted. So I need a very clear path from start to finish and know where I'm going. Otherwise, it just stops. And then I'm like, right, well, let's pick something where I do know where I'm going. But sometimes the same thing happens. I need clear direction. That's what holds me.
That's amazing. That is almost exactly what I've kind of come down to. Yeah, I'll jump into a build. Your Hetzer is a great example because I have a Tamiya Hetzer that's been sitting there in primer for a couple of years, and it's just because I don't have that vision, So for me, that almost exactly what you've said. I need to find a reference picture or something that I want to do before I start gluing parts together because it's fun to build. I don't really have a shelf of doom as much as a models waiting for paint shelf. But yeah, that trips me up every time. I'm interested in what you guys think. And if that's something, JB, is that something that you struggle with?
Yeah, I think so. I was thinking hard about this topic, and where I struggle, in the build, probably similar to Jensen, is I get to a stage, and actually the Bradley's at that stage where I got to punch through. I did post shading, did the pin wash. I have really great shadows, and now it's going on to that dust effect, and it always scares me. I struggle with execution sometimes, and it's even down to considering, like, do I want to do it over a matte surface, satin? Is it going to leach into the paint? Because you've seen sometimes with light colored oil paints, and it has to be something with the pigments. You put a drop on and you go to blend it within 10 seconds and you have this, stain on the surface. So I get gun shy at those stages, just like Jensen, and it causes me to bog down a build. And I look over at my shelf and there's other builds that have been stalled at that stage just because it's like once you want to do it, you look at pictures, it just takes time, I guess, for me in some cases where I just got to punch through. And once I punch through, it's off to the races. But it's like just this one step could change the whole build, I think. And it becomes paralysis sometimes.
Yeah, I really, really feel that for sure. TJ, what about you? Is there something that consistently derails you? And do you kind of struggle with vision like we've been talking about?
What derails me, kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier with the Bradley, is priming. I freaking hate priming. I hate it so much. It's my least favorite thing of anything. I'd rather assemble tracks than prime a freaking model, even with the spray can. I don't know. I just hate it. And I've got a lot of things that I've gotten to that point. And I'm just like, I just don't have the patience to do this right now. I've got 3 models on my desk right now. 4 models on my desk right now that are ready for priming. They're done. Just ready. All I have to do is be primed, and I just don't want to do it because I hate doing it so much. To me, there's just like no good way to do it. If you use an airbrush, it takes for freaking ever. If you use a rattle can, I just spray it in the basement because there's nothing on this side. But then, still, it's going to smell like spray paint down here for a while. And I don't feel like taking it upstairs or going outside because it's far. And yeah, I hate it so much. That and base coating, that's like the second thing that I also hate. If I could just get all the models primed, preferably not by Scott, just delivered to me, I would be happy. I love building. It's funny because it used to, building a kit and like putting all the details and all that crap on there, that used to be where I was just like, oh my God, I just don't want to do this. I enjoy that more now than I probably ever have in my whole career, quote unquote.
That Crusader I sent you, it was primed, and I didn't know you hated priming so bad. Yeah. So that's good.
48 scale isn't that bad because that thing is like the size of a matchbox. But I know JB was complaining about priming his Bradley, and it's like,
it's terrible.
Just like eating paint.
Yeah, I feel like I used half a bottle of Mr. Surfacer Black, and then I used almost a full bottle of Tamiya lacquer, the little bottle of NATO green. It's just so complex. It's not even, the vehicle is no bigger than a Tiger, but it's incredibly complex. So you have to like get up into these areas behind the armor and the plating and the suspension and all the wheels. So it's just the complexity of it. And like you said, that, to be honest, TJ, I'm the same way. Priming sucks ass. I'll be with a capital ASS. And I bought a Grex tritium trigger pistol airbrush because priming sucks so bad. And I found that using a traditional one, it was really hurting my fingers after a while. But with the ergonomics of a pistol grip, I actually use my middle finger on it, and it works just a lot better. And I don't there's just no pain at the end of the day too. I don't want early onset arthritis or anything, or carpal tunnel. I'm semi joking about that because sometimes it is really, your hand will cramp up. So consider getting a pistol grip. Yeah.
I need to get with you and find that out because, it happens to me a lot. I'm a little bit older than the rest of you guys. So, yeah, it's a thing. Your hand will cramp up and it definitely hurts. So, and what were you going to say, TJ?
Yeah, I'll look into a pistol. That's a good idea. Yeah. The other, so there's one other spot, and I'm sure it's the same. Like, I'm not the only person that has this problem. Weathering. Even when I know what I want to do, it's getting from. I take a lot of pride in my paintwork, and especially when I'm painting like olive drab. Like, there's a couple of things that I'm really good at, and that's one of them. And it's happened like on every time I've done something in olive drab, I get it to the point where I'm ready to weather it. I'm like, and this looks so good. My Sherman 3, the black and OD camo one. I love the way, if I could, I should have just stopped, honestly, because it just looked good. And I started weathering. I'm like, yeah, I don't like this. This sucks. I know exactly what I want it to look like, and I know pretty much how I'm going to do it. And yeah, it's like 2/3 weathered. I'm like, I don't like this at all. This is not what I want to do. And it's just been sitting there. Yeah, that's the other thing that always consistently hangs me up. I've got a lot of projects that are at that level too, painted and ready to be weathered.
So just to be clear, it's not that you don't know how to weather it so much as you just don't like what the weathering has done, how it's changed the appearance.
Sometimes I don't know how I'm going to do it. I have an idea in my mind, and I'm sure a lot of people have that disconnect between what I see up here and transferring it down my arm into my hand to make it a reality. That can be difficult. Even like I feel like I'm a pretty good modeler, and I have a pretty broad range of skills. Like, I like to consider myself a jack of all trades. I don't know if there's a whole one or two things that maybe I do pretty well, but as far as modeling goes, I try to be well-rounded and well-versed with all the different techniques. And even, I still have a hard time because I see it how I want it in my brain. And then my hand's like, we're not going to do that. We're going to do something else. And then I just get frustrated and put it away.
I think weathering is a stage where a lot of people trip up. I've been talking a lot to Justin Lentz about his Volksjager he's been working on. And, every step he just questions himself, and it looks great. He's really, really doing an amazing job with it. But I think he really, really struggles because he gets each stage done and he just really happy with what he has. And I think he's kind of hesitant to, take that next step. And, it inevitably turns out, but it definitely derails him. Anybody else struggle with that?
I struggle a little bit with the weathering. The first part of weathering really scares me, like the first pin wash you do, like JB does and TJ and all those guys do. It's that taking that base coat and then just all of a sudden now you're just attacking it with, I hate that. It scares me. I think I'm going to do it wrong, and I'm doing something wrong every time. It really, really gets on my craw a little bit. I really fall back and I jump away from it and stuff like that. Another thing that Jensen and you, Scott, talked about is not knowing what you're going to do with the kit. I think my biggest problem is that I think I have too many ideas in my head about the figure or the model, whatever it is. I want to do it this way. Oh, no, I want to do it this way. Oh, no, I like this one better. And I get so caught up in that. I guess it's overreaction to it. And I just set it over on the side and say, okay, I'm done. When I figure it out, I'll do it. And that's where my biggest slowdown is with all my modeling is that point where I say, okay, I've got this done. Now what is it supposed to be? Well, I want it to be this, or I want it to be that, or I want it to be like this color. I want that color. No, this color doesn't look right. I want to use a different color. So I'm jumping. I get lost in my head, and I just completely and utterly it's information overload, I guess. And I just put it down and I stop.
It's interesting. I wonder, John, is it Harvey Lowe that does all the 109s and it just does tons of them, or do I have the wrong modeler? But, you get modelers that will do
Very numeric.
Oh yeah, very numeric, and he'll just do dozens and dozens of the same subject. I kind of wonder if maybe that's what's coming into play. They love the subject, and they just want to do all these different, variations of that subject. So that's interesting. I wonder if that's kind of the motivation there. But anyway, Grant, is that kind of your challenge, or do you have anything else that kind of trips you up?
That's my biggest trip up. I mean, to tell you the truth, and then. That's the part I do not like the most, is that I get confused pretty easy. But, that's me. Eric, what's your biggest area?
I've actually kind of got two. The first one is just getting started, because in my mind, when I look at a kit that hasn't started, there's infinite possibility there. And then every step of construction, I'm taking away possibilities of what this might end up being. And so now I have to commit to something that gives me trouble. I'm getting much better than that about that. But the second one is also priming, but for a different reason than has been articulated already. And there's kind of a mental separation that I have between construction and finishing, and priming is that line. So when the primer reveals, that seam that didn't get sanded right, or that scratch that you didn't notice in the plastic to fill in, like there's kind of something in my head that tells me, well, you can't fix that now because construction's done. And I know that's silly, right? It's foolish, but it's still there. And so I got to struggle through that and try to move on. And a lot of times I know that's coming. So when it's time to prime it, I'm like, well, I should let the glue dry and make sure that it's completely dry before I do that.
I think that's why I don't do a lot of aircraft, because, you do prime and then you see, oh, I've got to fix this seam, I've got to fix that seam. But yeah, I haven't really thought about it in terms of phases and, oh, we shut the door on that. Let's move on to the next one.
Right. So another aspect of that, like that problem is much worse with aircraft or with like cars, right? Because you finish that first step so much earlier, where you have to prime the cockpit or the interior of the car or whatever before you can proceed with assembly. So, that'll, and then once you've done that, you got to go back and do it again later in the build.
Yeah, I agree, Eric. I mean, that's something that's a good point. You see it as a building phase, a priming phase, a painting phase, a weathering phase. And I could see where that definitely will throw up. I mean, to tell you the truth, I don't build aircraft because I'm terribly scared of ghost seams. And I really have. I've half built like 4 aircraft in my life. And every time I do that, and I put the primer on it, and it's like, there's the seam, even though I do all this stuff and stuff, like it's in my head now. And it's just one of those things that I've got to get past. And I know I can probably fix it, but it's just one of those things.
Black super glue is your friend, man.
Yeah, I've heard that. Black super glue, the thicker super glue. I got to get over this here.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody, on this topic. For those of you out there listening, what consistently trips you up? Hopefully, if we think about it in terms of that, we can find ways of kind of getting around it and overcoming those obstacles and get more done at our bench. So send us what trips you up, either post it on the Plastic Posse Facebook page, or you can send that to plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com. All right, let's kick it over now to JB for upcoming model shows and events.
Thanks, Scott. We have quite a list, so let's rock and roll. So as Grant mentioned before, he's gearing up for the Best of the West Model Show and Convention. That'll be held next weekend, which will drop with this episode. It'll be the following weekend, May 18th, and it's held at the Orleans Hotel and Casino. The show is put on by a group of 5 different local modeling clubs and runs from 9 to 5. It's going to be a lot of fun. Special shout out to Jay Bergeron, who is running the show, and you can contact him on Facebook for more details. It's going to be awesome. Really looking forward to it, and happy they moved it up from the fall. So this is going to be great. Also on the 18th, out in California, Silver Wings in Sacramento is hosting SilverCon 2024. This year's theme is 1944. It's another 9 to 5 show at the Town and Country Lutheran Church in Sacramento, California. For more information, check out their Facebook page or contact our good friend Drew Savage on Facebook. Next, we have the 41st Smoky Mountain Model Con held on the 25th, the following weekend, at Knoxville Catholic High School in Knoxville, Tennessee. The show's theme is 46 to 55, and the deets can be found on knoxvillescalemodelers.com. Our buddy JC Osborne would like to let us know about another show. It's a great show as well. It is held on June 22nd, and that is WonderCon. 2024 Model Contest and Swap Meet presented by the IPMS Region 8 10 Wonders. This event will be held at the Murphy Auto Museum from 9 to 4, and the entrance to the museum and contest is only $10. For more details, head on over to the Ventura County IPMS page on Facebook or contact JC directly. Another one that I think a bunch of our good friends are going to, at least, is Wonderfest. It's the premier sci-fi show, which will be held on June 1st to the 2nd in 2024, and it'll be held at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Louisville. So that'll be a great show. And I'm going to kick it back to Grant to talk about a new SoCal Amps group.
Yeah, I just want to take a few seconds here. And there's a brand new Amps group out here in Southern California in San Gabriel Valley. Their inaugural meeting will be the first Tuesday of the month. So that's June 4th, 7:30 to 9:30 in American Legion Hall. If you have any questions or about the club or want to join, you can send that information. You can request it from me or San Gabriel Valley Amps at gmail.com. So SanGabrielBalleyamps at gmail.com. This is run by a really good friend of mine, John Cena, and he's a nice guy. You should really have a good meeting there. So I just want to give him a shout out. All right, Scott, you got something for us.
Yeah, just another reminder on June 22nd from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. here in Salt Lake City. We are pleased to present the first annual Rocky Mountain Expo. This is going to be an open format figure show. It's been organized by several great modelers and friends here in the Salt Lake City area. It's going to be a different kind of model show than we've had here in the Intermountain West in the past. We've still got a couple of awards that are available for sponsorship. We've had a lot of people step up, and I'm really, really grateful for that. Thank you very, very much. If you'd like to give us a hand with those, you can contact me on Facebook, or you can go to our website or our Facebook page. Our website is Rocky Mountain MTN HobbyExpo.com, and on Facebook it's Rocky Mountain Hobby Expo. Come join us if you're going to be in the area. If you can, it's going to be a lot of fun. Sean Earl's going to be doing a tour of the aviation hangar of the Utah Air National Guard, so you can see Apaches and Blackhawks close up. So that's going to be super cool. We're going to have some great modelers there. We're going to have some seminars. It's going to be a lot of fun. So hopefully you'll come and join us. Doug isn't with us, but let's take a look at some feedback. We're just going to summarize this. We got a ton of feedback. Our topic from last time on Solo Time at the Bench really hit a nerve with a lot of people. Thank you so much for the comments you posted on our Facebook page, and also that you've sent us. Really appreciate it. It was a fun discussion. So Louis Kowalski, I hope I said your name right, says, I know this is ancient stuff, but I've been listening to the podcast early on. There was a number of times where you discussed saving models for when one is better, and the advice is always don't wait, just build it. Does this argument change if the model that you're saving is either rare or expensive, or what some call a magnum opus build? I think it really depends on each thing. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of models anymore that are super rare or expensive. I just think dive in and do it. I mean, I'm guilty of it. I've got that perfect grade Millennium Falcon that's sitting there that someday, air quotes, I'm going to do. I think just get in there and build it. I was inspired by Boyle Hobby Time. He grabbed a perfect grade Millennium Falcon and he just banged it out, and it looked really good. He did a great job, but he just dove into it and got it done. So, guys, I don't know what you think, but my response to Lewis is just do it.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. Build that.
Yep, what TJ said.
If you ruined it, okay, just strip it and build another one. There's very little you can do to a kit. I mean, obviously it's possible, but there's very little you can do to a kit to permanently damage it to beyond saving. So yeah, just build it.
All right, I'm going to go with our next one from John Vickus, pretty much on the same link. It says, I'll weigh in on the psychological perspective. Either approach is fine, but the I'll wait till I'm better approach may be a sign of procrastination in general. So my advice is that you tend to procrastinate, then go ahead and build that rare, expensive kit, because you might wait until it's not good enough. You'll just probably procrastinate till the end. So I think we just answered it with the same question above. I think just like everybody said, like TJ perfectly said, just fucking build it.
Joe McCaslin writes in, episode 92 touched a nerve. I'm in my mid-50s, and over the course of the years, model has been both isolation and being social. My building has been therapy for me. Like many of us, the focus needed and the silence were welcome aspects of growing up. When the course was rough, model building was there to help me through it. Now I'm learning to embrace the social aspect. My dear friend and I started a club up here in northeastern Washington State. During meetings, the agenda is building and social interaction. My meetings end up with more socializing than building. When I need to hide from real life, I still embrace the isolation. Social media has thrown traditional modeling a major curve. I'm a member of several modeling groups on Facebook. I use Insta and use TikTok. I have made some dear friends online whom I have never been able to see physically in the same room with, but it's awesome. When I want to silence the thoughts in my head, I still find myself alone, sometimes with music, sometimes without. It is still my therapy. Couldn't agree more. Really appreciate Joe writing in. I think this is maybe one of the first times we've heard from him, and certainly we hope to hear from you again. It kind of just hits on the theme we talked about last time, where silence is golden, and we all need a social recharge sometimes.
Yep. And in that same vein, Kenneth Childress, Robert Blocker, and Martin Holst, all awesome dudes that a lot of us have had the pleasure of meeting. They all pretty much said the same thing, that like the social aspect is great, but just coming down to the model bench and just tuning everything out, sometimes it's really good. Yeah, Kenneth mentioned that he has a group kind of similar to my amps group that he builds with, but doesn't really build when he's with them, and he'll get home and just kind of go down to the shop and enjoy himself. And Robert said similar things. He's busy with people at work and sits behind a screen at work and gets home and wants to not be distracted by nonsense. And our buddy Martin Holst said pretty much the same thing. Just always, have that solo retreat to fall back to. So all good stuff.
Yeah, we want to thank everybody again for the feedback. We got a mountain. It was great. It's pretty awesome that some of our discussions really resonate with our listeners. And again, I invite you to share your thoughts with us at plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com, or just post on the Plastic Posse group, and the community is really energized. You're going to get responses, and I think they're usually going to be really terrific. Well, let's kick this on over to TJ. He's going to talk to our special guest, Eric.
Yeah, so this idea to have Eric come on, well, first of all, Eric's a friend of mine, so that's the main reason. But the other reason, ostensibly, for purposes of the podcast, is because Eric was the, I guess, victim, if you will, at our post AMPS Awards beer and pizza breakdown, because Eric had the privilege of judging a number of our entries, and when we talked about it in the last episode, he left a very thoughtful and long, it was great, comment about judging and judges getting feedback, because AMPS celebrates the modelers getting feedback. And he raised a good point that it was good for him as a judge to get feedback on the judging, that and really judging the feedback should work both ways, because we love that word here. So getting feedback as a modeler is important, and getting feedback as a judge is equally important. And JB said you pretty much just volunteered yourself to come on the podcast and talk about it. So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, I appreciate, Eric and Nick sitting in. We just saw Netflix released the roast of Tom Brady. I think we had the roast of Eric Kervina and Nick following our AMP show. So really appreciate the good sport and the very thoughtful reply on Facebook. I think you touched on a lot of things. It just goes to show that every aspect of, I'll say, the exhibition, there's opportunities to teach, grow, learn, and essentially all the above. And I think you called out some great things in that. But maybe before we jump into exactly what you said, Eric, this is your first time on the pod, and just maybe some background from your perspective on, how long you've been modeling, and then was this your first AMP show, and certainly your first time judging. So just some background framing, because I think a lot of our listeners can relate to who you are. And, we just really appreciate you putting yourself out there.
Sure. So my first model that I built, I was around 5 years old, and built a kit with my brother and a friend of his. And then, I got pulled away from the hobby when I discovered recess and snack time, and didn't get back to it till I was probably 9 years old or so, when my mom was dating who is now my stepfather. And I thought he was really cool, and he built models. And so he was really kind of my hero. And, after building that initial car model, I wasn't really interested in models. But once I saw him doing it, then I was like, well, I've got to be like him. So that's when I got back into building models. Pretty much built since then. I never really focused on a particular genre or subject, just whatever seemed cool at the time or whatever I could get my hands on. I have never been someone who really keeps models around. So my stepfather was in the Air Force. We moved a lot. So most of my models either went to friends or went in the trash because putting them in the hands of moving companies pretty much guarantees they're not going to arrive at the destination. So yeah, so I don't keep builds. I give them away, or throw them away, and so I often don't have anything really to show. But I have been modeling for quite a while. I'm in my mid 50s now, so it's been several decades. As far as AMPS, this past AMPS International Convention was my second. I also went last year. Last year I judged one time, so just 1 2-hour block. This year I did 2. I've gone through. Before I did that, I went through all of the slides and the presentations that are made available by AMPS that tell you how to judge. And I thought that stuff was really good. And unfortunately, last year I arrived too late to get the judging class. But this year I was able to attend the class that Dave Vickers gives on how to judge. So I had kind of all that background information. But while these things told me how to judge, they didn't tell me if I was actually executing those steps properly. I guess it was kind of like, making a cake and sending it to someone else and never speaking to them about it. I have no idea. I followed the recipe, but did I mess it up? Who knows? Only the person on the other end. And that kind of bothered me, right? I know a lot of people say, the way you can be a better judge. I got a lot of feedback on that of, well, judge more. And I can see that experience can make you better at things, but you can also be really bad at something for a really long time. And if no one's telling you that, how do you know? My concern here is, we're supposed to be doing this judging to help people become better modelers. But if I'm giving them bad advice and bad feedback, I'm not helping them. And that kind of blows the whole purpose of my being there out of the water. Yeah. So that was my background thoughts on it and how I got there.
Nice. Well, I think I will give credit to AMPS for at least doing some training. I think that's great. There are other large national conventions that, essentially just take anyone off the street and take your word as a resume. And as we all know, that's not the best way to, evaluate, contest models. So I definitely appreciate AMPS for that. I think it is very interesting. A lot of the points you bring up, Eric, and this being your first time, I'm trying to harken back to when I did my judging with AMPS, and it really came down to, and you had kind of touched on it in your post, where it's great to get the training, but it really takes a good table captain or a team lead to have a very efficient, not only efficient, but a well-performing judging crew for that matter. I think the experience and the approach is incredibly important. And, some of the other podcasts, Insanity hinted on it. Rob Riv talked about how if you're not trained properly and you don't discuss kind of like the benchmark or ground rules up front, you can really negatively affect the modeler. And, one instance they noted, and I can definitely support is, we've talked about, there's a single little flaw and everybody takes a half point off, where I think TJ noted this same thing last week, where a good table captain, I'd like to think I would do it, is like, okay, who's going to take that one? Great. You take that half point. Let's move on. We're not going to take a full 1.5 or 2 points off of this model because their wheel is a little crooked. So going back to what you said, Eric, it's really important. It's great to learn, hey, here's the box of funfetti. Make the cake. I'll come back, 2 days after it's been made, and I'll check out your crumbs to see if it was right. That's not really you got to taste it. You got to have the first piece. You got to be there with the batter mixing and making sure it's all mixed up properly. So bottom line is I think I'm just supporting a lot of what you've said, and what I hope, and I'll kick it over to Scott here and tee up him in essence for how he's looking at running his show and the approach to judging in that regard. Now, granted, he is using, I think, experienced modelers, but there's also the opportunity for, people that are interested in judging to come along and learn on, dare I say, principles.
Before we go to you, Scott, kind of jump in and talk about something kind of going back to what JB was saying. So Eric had mentioned in his post that like how instructive it was for him to sit down with us and listen to what we had to say and encourage people to do that. And to me, I think that's awesome because especially with IPMS, they try to have this disconnect between the judges and the modelers, right? Oh, you're not supposed to know who you're judging, blah, 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 blah. And AMPS is similar to that, but you know who the judges are, at least by initials. You don't get full names. And it's good to hear from the actual judge and know who judged your stuff. And it's okay that they know you, because I know, like everyone in this room, I can judge my friend's work fairly, maybe even harder than someone else, because they're my friend and I know what they're capable of. If they don't live up to that, I'm going to hold them accountable for it. You can ask Ian, ask Doc. That's all happened to us. We've judged their work, and when they've made mistakes, they were noted. They weren't, this is one of my best friends. I'm not going to note that his tracks are messed up, or I'm not going to note that he didn't paint the headlights on his tank. Like, no, we made a note of that. And then afterwards we're like, hey, dipshit, like you didn't do the basic things that we know you know how to do. And I feel like maybe not a lot of people kind of get that experience, both as a judge and as an entrant, to actually talk to the people that looked at your stuff. IPMS is like, oh, well, you can go up to the judges table. Yeah, well, there's like 300 judges. So how do you know who judged what? There's no, they don't have that info. I know in my 3 shifts, there 3 times judging an IPMS ads, I've probably judged 400 models, 500 models. It's like, how can I talk to all those people? But since we love talking about SMC, that's the one thing that's interesting there. You know exactly who judged your stuff, and they will talk to you about it. And they're told to make themselves available to do so. JB did it last year. You get the little judge's pen, so everyone knows you judged, and the list of who judged what category is readily available. So you just find the person that judged your work, and you can go talk to them. And I think that's pretty awesome. I think it's great that Eric brought that up, that judges need to hear from what they have to say.
So I'd kind of like to cut in line ahead of Scott as well.
Scott, go to the corner. You cried enough today.
Yeah. Primer now this. Get over there.
Just as sort of a clarifying thing, I don't want anything that I have said or have to say to come across as any kind of discontent or criticism of how AMPS runs things. I participated in AMPS judging because I think it's the only judging system I've come across that I think is good. I realize that might make some people tighten up because there is an implicit criticism of other organizations there, but that is my feeling. So I am all in on AMPS judging. I have historically not entered kits into any kind of competition or anything like that. I will, for the most part, continue to do that, but I have committed to putting models on the table at AMPS International next year, because that kind of broke through my position that model judging can kind of be BS and not really helpful, because you don't know why you got knocked out. You don't know why you didn't get something. You don't know why you got something over the guy who came in behind you in most situations. And so I really appreciate that AMPS gives you that information, because I don't really care about making a better modeler than someone else. I care about making a better model than I used to. And so I crave that feedback. And so my thoughts on becoming a better judge are kind of related to that, right? Because clearly some of the judging feedback was just not relevant to what was actually going on with the model. And that happens sometimes, but at least you know where that came from. And you're not sitting there, when they say, the wheels on your field kitchen are canted out and so you lose points. Well, you know why you lost points. You know they're wrong, but then you don't have to sit there looking at your field kitchen trying to figure out what is wrong with this thing and how do I fix it. So even poor feedback is useful in doing better as a modeler. But again, that judge doesn't know that their feedback wasn't good. And so how do they not do that next time? And that's why I value that feedback mechanism to me as a judge of listening to the modelers go through and say, yeah, this is legitimate. Judge was absolutely right here. They dropped the ball on this one. That's valuable to doing better. And I don't think there's anybody who wants to do a bad job, right? We don't do things because we want to be bad at it. So now related to that, I recognize that SMC is going with, experienced, well-known modelers who do really good work to be judges. But I think even those people need some information back to them on whether or not they're doing well with how they're judging. And I'm sorry to dominate and run on, but I'm going to take the fact that, this is an interview with me.
Hey, if Scott ain't talking, we're happy. So keep going.
So there's a particular way of looking at things that I have, and I realize that this is kind of a little bit of a tangent, but I think it will be illustrative of my thought process on this. There are skills that are entirely dependent on another skill. And the way I always think of it, just because of my experience and the world I live in, is you cannot be a better writer than you are reader. You will always read better than you can possibly write. With some exceptions, you might accidentally hit a clever phrasing or something like that. But, if you're looking at a body of work, every writer is better at reading than they are at writing. And that doesn't mean everyone who's a highly skilled reader can be a highly skilled writer. The one skill is dependent on the other, but it doesn't guarantee, right? And I think within modeling, it's kind of the same thing. You cannot be a better builder than you are a judge because you're constantly judging what it is that you're doing as you build, right? You're looking for those flaws. You're looking for those things that don't fit right, those things that just look wrong. You're trying to do so. Those two skills are dependent, but they kind of flip the other way, right? Because you can consistently build well and be bad at articulating why what you're doing is good. And that transfers to looking at someone else's work. If you're not good at articulating, you can look at it and go, oh, this is wrong. And you can fiddle with it till you fix it. But when you're looking at someone else's model, you can't fiddle with it till you fix it. You have to be able to tell them why it's wrong. And so I think that building and judging thing doesn't necessarily line up. I think we can have some spectacular builders who still fail as judges because of the way that they look at something or the way they articulate their position. Does that make any sense, or did I?
Yeah, no, 100%. So I think I've probably mentioned it before on an episode. I know I've mentioned it offline, at least in just talking. You don't have to be the best at something to judge greatness, right? And my favorite thing to talk about is Roger Ebert, right? Legendary movie critic. Do you think he could make a better movie than like Francis Ford Coppola? No, absolutely not. Could he be?
Didn't he make
a better movie? Could he make a better movie?
Valley of the Dolls.
Who's that? Francis Ford Coppola?
No,
I don't know.
Didn't he make Valley of the Dolls? It was like a horrible movie.
I don't know.
He did.
Did he make movies?
I'm sorry.
I just always assumed that he didn't.
Sorry, I didn't mean to break you there.
No, that's fine. But like, it's same thing with music criticism. You don't have to be, I don't know, pick an amazing musician, Jimi Hendrix, to know what good guitar sounds like. You know what I mean? Like, you just have to have the eye or the ear to look at things critically and understand what you're looking at. And that's where I think a lot of model judging sometimes fails, when you just bring any random schmo off the street. They may not fully understand what they're looking at. And that just comes with time. You know, that can all be taught. Everything can be taught. And anyone that knows me knows I'm a believer in that. There is no innate skill is a thing, but everything can be taught. Greatness can be taught. And yeah, that same thing with judging. You don't have to be the best to judge. I've judged stuff way better than what I can do, like way better. And it's awesome. But I feel like I know what I'm looking at. I may not be able to do that, but I know how it's done and how it should look. And that's, I think that's kind of what you were saying. You don't have to be the best of the best to understand what the best of the best should look like.
Exactly. I think that judging capability leads the building capability. So if you see someone who's a really good builder, they probably have, particularly if it's consistent, right? And I think it's another thing, like anybody may get lucky with something and come up with a good result, even though they didn't know what they were doing or didn't know what they were going for, and they just walked into it. So when you see someone who is a really good builder, chances are they're going to be able to see those flaws and all that kind of thing. But that is, like I said, that doesn't mean they can articulate it in a useful way. And I think that's why the judging feedback is important, because we can look at someone who's really good and go, oh, well, he's giving feedback. Clearly, that's going to be useful to the modeler. Well, hopefully.
That's a great point. There's 2 points I really like. First of all, I found, and I hope I don't upset some people, but I found that really, really, really good modelers sometimes are very, very bad judges in a very big way. I think it might be that they see something a little bit different and they dig deeper. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but I've had better feedback from other people than I had from really good judges or really good model builders. Let's put it that way. Judges that have been they're not to that quality. I think I've learned a lot more from them as judges. I've seen where judges that have a lot of are very good tend to shorthand their information flow to a new judge, where a judge that's only been there a little while will be more aggressive. It'll help them. They'll show them. They'll walk around with them. And that's just, I think, a time issue. I don't know, but that's what I've seen in the past. And I think that's a very, very good point, Eric, that, people, they always think, oh, this person's going to be this person. They've been in every magazine. They've got their own books. They've done this, everything. And they think, oh, they're going to be a great judge. Well, they might be to a point, but I think there is a lack or a deficiency, is a better word, for a senior modeler like that when it comes to a new judge or something to that. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but that's the way I definitely see it.
Yeah, I want to go back to what Eric said, too. You mentioned judges make mistakes, and they make mistakes at the highest levels of, talent and competition as well. TJ and I went to a show with the best of the best, and, there were some judges' decisions that were reevaluated. And it came back and awards were corrected based on some reconsiderations that were incredibly valid to make. So definitely echoing the point that no judge is perfect. I think when it comes to judging basic principles, benefit of the doubt always goes to the modeler. I think we can all agree to that. In terms of historical accuracy, this is one that I think is a major pitfall for judges. TJ experienced it with his crocodile in a scene that was not supposed to be there, but yet on the vehicle it is there. So I think if you are judging for the first time or any time, is to put that personal bias aside. I mean, I find myself struggling when it comes to German armor, specifically like King Tigers and Panthers, but that's not part of the criteria. So you should try to leave that out. And it's unfortunate because I've seen that happen many a times, especially at the national convention, where it's just this bias comes in to discuss accuracy as opposed to the scale model. And that's a major pitfall too. And then lastly, I'll talk about too, when it comes to being a good judge, and I know this conversation's evolved a lot, is putting your style bias to the back. I'll just use me as an example, feedback around weathering. It's like, listen, I don't make those type of comments on sheets. That's not my place. If someone enjoys the style of Verlinden, if they execute it well, I have nothing to say. I appreciate it. And the same goes for if you want to push a wilder, crazy, super saturated chip vehicle. Like if you execute it well, I legit have nothing to say. And then that goes for a Tony Greenland style dry brushing titanium white on the corners. If you do it well, my comments and finish consistency, if that's what you're going for, I'm not going to ding you for it. Like that's your execution style. And that's where judging from my perspective will always be subjective. And it's unfortunate that we can't train that, but we have to respect it and we have to understand it and do our best not to have that as a pitfall. Because it's okay to use subjectivity. That's going to happen. Even though we have a rubric, it's still a subjectivity call on how many points you're taking away, how you evaluate the finish consistency. If there was anything I've ever heard before in a subject, for subjectivity, that's the category. And we just have to be cognizant of it. And again, Eric, I do want to reinforce exactly what you said around AMPS. I think in terms of an organization that prepares their teams, they are leaps and bounds ahead of everyone, especially, the largest competing group to them. It's like, this is how you start. This is how you build a core judging group that is well trained. And over time, like next year, Eric, now you're going to come back and judging experience, might even be a totally different experience. And it'll be a great experience for you to sit at the table for people that are just starting or have been a part of the process and haven't had that kind of that perspective. And you can help bring them along as well. So I think, again, just echoing what you said, from a training, from a taking someone off the street and making them a really good judge, AMPS has the bones to it. And then they can let their teams build on that experience as well.
Yeah. So the comments about particular techniques, right? I saw a bunch of that, like where people had said, consider dry brush to bring out the highlights. You could say, consider increasing the highlights, right? You're not giving the modeler a technique that you think they should be using because that should be their decision, but you are still expressing that, hey, we're losing detail in your paint job and you might want to pull that out, right? So, and I think that's still I think that should still be offered as a neutral thing, right? You don't take any points away from that or anything like that, but just let the modeler know that the detail's hard to see and you want to see it because they went to the effort of making it, right? So I don't know that I have a whole lot more to say on this subject, but one thing that I really, really wanted to get into this conversation is to let everyone who was at the table on Saturday night, everyone who was at the table reading through the comments and stuff, all of that was so appreciated. I know there's been a lot of jokes about, me getting beat up for the judging and stuff like that, but I did not for a moment take it that way. My only concern in that realm was if I said something that made someone at the table feel bad and I was sitting right there, that would make them more uncomfortable. And that was the only concern I had. Other than that, everyone talking about my comments, agree, disagree, whatever, that was just information for me to do better next time. And I am so grateful for that. I cannot even express it.
Yeah, sitting around the table, like you mentioned, Eric, I don't think anyone took it seriously, and we are grateful for your support in that. And I hope next year, you just join in on the fun, grab your judging sheets, and we'll have a laugh. And it's always going to be that way. This notion that judges are perfect, it's not. They're not. There's always going to be a rub here or there. And I think what's important is, we purely joke around it. Like TJ has said many times, these are toys that we're judging, that you get a little piece of metal that when you die or when you move, they're going to go in the garbage. Like you can make the shrine today in your house around the wall of medals and awards and all these things. Don't get me wrong. I have awards and award cabinets, but at the end of the day, like, what we're doing right now, talking to people, that's the most important thing, hands down, at least from my perspective. And, those little trinkets of cheap, oh gosh, I don't even know what they're made out of, probably recycled, cars for crying out loud. But regardless of what that physical object is, it doesn't matter. What matters is, we have a lifelong friend now, Eric Kervina, who, put himself out there now on the podcast, will be a constant fixture in the shows that we go to, and someone that we'll always love to hang out with. Like, that's the most important thing. You can have all my awards. I don't care. This is what matters. And the human element of the hobby will always be there in every aspect.
I do have a cabinet that is absolutely empty. So, if I can have all the awards, we'll just put them on the wall.
I guess we can go back to you now, Scott, if you even remember what you were going to say.
Well, I mean, honestly, it's been a great discussion.
Let's moving on. Let's
next subject, please.
Exactly. I mean,
I'm sorry, Scott. I couldn't help myself.
I wouldn't expect anything else. It's good. It's great. No, really great comments. And as we've been putting our show together, it's not an AMP show. I'm a member of an AMPS club, and we'll be doing that as well. But the comments really are consistent with what we're trying to do. What we want to do is we want to treat modelers like customers, and what people go to shows for and what they get value from is what we want to address. So we want to clearly identify on the tables whose modeling work that it is. We want to do a judging style that it gives the modeler every benefit of the doubt that we can. And we do want to use the SMC model, and we'll be using the model of having recognizable judges, modelers in our community and from the national community. Rick Lawler, Grant Mayberry, people are coming in that are recognized subject experts. And it isn't because we're saying that they're automatically going to be great judges, and I'll get back to that in a minute. It's because what I hear from everybody that I talk to is what Eric said earlier, which is, well, I showed my modeler to this guy who's a great armor builder, for instance, and he really gave me some great pointers and some great tips. So, that sort of expertise there is a part of the equation. And then the other part is our contest chair is Barry Biediger. He co-runs with Jim on small subjects, the MMSI show every year. And so we've got a great contest coordinator who really knows what he's doing. He's going to be providing judging ahead of the event, and then on the morning of the event, following up with more training. And then I think the rest of what we've talked about is feedback, not just from the judges being available to talk to the modelers, but one of our show's group, we have a board that is putting this show on. One of our tasks is after the show is over, we're going to have a postmortem, and we're going to go over the contest. We're going to go over every aspect of what happened, and we're going to talk about continuous improvement. We got this feedback from the participants. What could we do better next time? And then in addition to that, we're going to have people on site giving sort of like an ongoing seminar about we're using an open system. So helping people who don't know what that is kind of understand how that works. And recognizing, just like John and TJ and Eric, you guys have said, judging is subjective, and let's not have that be a bad thing. Let's have that be a good thing and incorporate that into the judging. So yeah, I think really, really great comments. And I love that fact. I think every show that uses judges, as Eric said, should have some kind of mechanism for feedback. Jensen, yes. Do you have anything to add to that?
No. I mean, literally everything I could have thought of has been discussed. It just kind of reiterates, I think one of the main issues, one of the biggest modeling organizations is that I've entered a few competitions at these events, and you don't get anything. You've no idea why. And that is one of the gripes usually I have. It's like, okay, it's kind of the philosophy of you didn't do good enough, but that's for you to learn out why. Like, you've got to somehow realize what you did, quote unquote, wrong without being told what was wrong. And it's just not a philosophy I agree with. And it's great to see like more and more now, more events, more competitions. They're going a more progressive way of, okay, here's some feedback of even if you got a gold, silver, bronze, but there's still some feedback for you. Like, you got a silver, here's what you could have done to have got a gold. Like, it's just feedback. It's like people treat it as such an ugly word. Like, feedback, it's like, oh, it's like, no, that's a great thing. Like, in any aspect of life. If I'm a chef, I want feedback on my food. If I'm doing anything, I want feedback, because otherwise I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing and not getting better at it. So yeah, I just think things are progressing in a in a much more positive and progressive way. And it's really good to see. And I really hope we start getting a lot more shows in the UK following that path.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's critical. I mean, if if you really want the best of the best, I get 1, 2, 3. If you want somebody that says, okay, I went and I entered, had a big competition, I was one of the top 3, Yahoo, whatever. But I think take a step back picture and look at what value you're providing. The people that bring their models to the show are the reason the show happens, right? They're your customers. And so if you're going to give feedback to 3 people out of 50 in a category, that means 47 people will come away from that with nothing, no feedback, no recognition of maybe some things that were good. And so that's why I think it's really, really critical that, we give feedback to a wider base of those customers than just 3 people. And gold, silver, bronze, whether it's in the AMP system, which is a modified system, or in an open system like what we're using here, I think the more feedback, the better, as far as, giving people the opportunity to come to a show, meet incredible people, collaborate, be inspired, but then also walk away and say, okay, I spent 6 months on this Sherman. What did I do good? What are some opportunities I can improve? And at the end of the day, they walk out the door. I think they're probably highly motivated to come back. And then hopefully maybe even share that with other people, share that approach, share that feedback with other people.
I just want to say that, and I'm sorry to keep rambling on, that I think that the feedback is very important, like Eric said, is because you want to be a better modeler. And without that feedback, you don't know what you need to do to become a better modeler. The best feedback I've ever gotten was from an MMSI show, the first one I ever went to. And it was, by a very famous person. And he said, you need to think about, he didn't tell me what to do like Eric was talking about. He didn't say, you need to do this or do this. He goes, think about this in a different way. Take your mind out of this certain subject and then look at it in a different way. And it'll help you find it. And they even they gave me their email address and said, hey, contact me and show me your stuff and I'll help you find that way. And even that is fantastic. I mean,
and as Eric said, do the same thing for the judges.
Yeah, exactly. Do the same thing for the judge. Tell the judge, hey, this is what I think you should do next time or look for next time. Don't do it this way. Look at it this way. Look at figures different. You have to look at figures or sci-fi differently than you look at armor and airplanes. You have to. That's just the way it is. And that's why it's important. And I go back to Vegas, because Vegas brings in judges from those people that know those sections to judge those areas. And that's a key thing too. But it's a two-way street. You've got to get feedback and you've got to give feedback to the judges.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing I'm really on about, right? I look at feedback to the modeler, in my mind, is a solved problem. Now, it's not universally handled, but we know how to do it.
Right.
And the next thing that needs to be solved is, how do you let the judges know that they're doing a good job or a poor job of what they're trying to do, so that they can develop in their judging the same as we're trying to get modelers to develop in their modeling.
Yeah, and I would say it's more important that we get feedback to judges than it is right now that we do to the modelers. I'm sorry, but that's just because there's been a shift somewhere and it needs to be done.
All right. Yeah, that was an interesting conversation. And thanks to Eric for kind of giving us the idea to do it and for coming on to the episode to talk about it. And now I'd like to take the time to remind everyone that the Plastic Posse is just one of several great scale modeling podcasts. If you're interested in more scale modeling content, you can head on over to modelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to many other great podcasts about the hobby. Posse also recommends several modeling blogs and vlogs, such as Stephen Lee's Sprue Pie with Frets, Chris Wallace's Model Airplane Maker, A Scale Canadian TV with Mr. Jim Bates, and David Brian Bridges' DB Scale Model Studio blog.
Hey, Jensen.
Hello.
Do you know what time it is?
Let me just check that sundial. It's time for merch. If you would like to rep the Posse, check out our awesome merch on the Triple P Spring page. You can find coffee mugs, t-shirts, jumpers, or even our world-famous Triple P lounge trousers. You can order all your stylish Triple P merch on the web at loungetrousers.com. And on that note, thanks for riding along with us for episode 93 of the Plastic Posse podcast. We appreciate your support, as well as the support of our awesome patrons. We'd also like to thank Tankcraft, Tamiya USA, and AK Interactive for supporting all that we do. And remember, the Plastic Posse is available on YouTube. We will return in 2 weeks for more discussions about scale modeling. Do you have feedback, suggestions, ideas, or just want to drop us a line? Send your feedback to us via email at plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com. And on that note, yeehaw!
One of the ways that you can help to support the Plastic Posse is to become an outrider. If you want to become a Plastic Posse outrider, it's super easy. You just go over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/Plastic Posse Podcast, and you can set up a recurring donation there. These contributions help offset the cost of bringing you the Triple P and also help support the community. There are 3 different tiers of support, and they start at just $1 a month. There's some great benefits to being an outrider, like you get early access to our podcast, premium access to the host, the chance to appear on a podcast, and exclusive Triple P content like the Scale Model Prospector and social events at model shows.
Let's recognize our amazing deputy marshals. These guys step up and help the posse do what we do, and we sincerely thank them for their support. They are Greg Williams, Nick Wolf, Ryan Clark, Sean Earl, Black Hat Scale Models, Ben Hardaway, Craig Jarbo, Adam Jackson, Red Beach One Studios, James Arando, Casey Gray, Mike Norris, Stephen Rodwell, Rick Cooper, Eric Kervina, John Hale, Eric Kane, Logan Hansen, Paul Burdett, Tim Gidcombe, Dan Newman, Robert Blocker, Tyler Moore, Derek Post, Craig Flynn, Scale Model Craft, Kenneth Childress, Nick Butta, Drew Gardner, Scott Hall, Frank Perrone, The Voice of Bob, Jeremy Diamond, Ryan Smith, Terry Wilkinson, Chris Lovewell, Andrew Callis, Ethan Nidenmill, Steve Baker, Joe Porche, Patrick Brown, Jay Kidd, Brandon Gentry, Lee Fogel, Robert Klein, Mark Ewing, Toadman, Model Doc, Doug Reed, Greg James, Les Fracalla, John Everett, Uncle Buck, Mark Bradley, Eric Brubaker, Jeremy Moore, DB Scale Model Studio, Matt Johnson, Jeremy Elliott, Mike Talley, Previous Seat, Mediocre, Middle-Aged Modeler, Dan Knopfel, and JC Osborne. Damn, I almost had all of them perfect.
Man, whoo.
That was impressive.
How about those posse foremen? Those are posse outriders who give the deputy marshals a hand. We thank them for their support. Russ, Stephen, Mickle, LeVar, Gil, Mike, Michael, Steve, Winston, Scott, Emery, The Krieger, Aussie Modeler, William, Keith, Sunkist, Jeff, Eddie, Ross, Warhoff Models, G. Baker, Tom Stuff, Crazy Loca, Len, Cliff, Damien, Kieran, Cody, Tim, Nukeman Mike, Ash, Irish Pat, Paul, iBones Models, Mr. Grizz, Jackson, Joel, Chris, Robert, Jamie, Steve, MD Models, Papa Steve Munsell, JV, Eric, Matthew, and David.
And of course, our $1 and free Posse Outriders. We appreciate all of you. Like Warren, thanks. Lastly, a request for all listeners. Would you please consider posting a review of the Triple P on your favorite podcast platform? Each 5-star review will help other modelers find the Plastic Posse.